everybody. We are back. Welcome to Fancy Lady Talks with Marissa Boyce.
Hi, and Rosie Bits.
Hello.
Come for the boobs,
Doot doot.
stay for the brains.
Or the boobs, whatever. At this point, we don't even care. Just stay.
Just stick around.
Just like and subscribe. See what happens. If you're enjoying the boobs, great. And if you want to listen to what we have to say, we're really smart, so you're going to get a benefit. Even if you stay for the boobs, it's going to sink in like osmosis.
You know, you could turn the sound off, but we do have some interesting things to say.
We have some really interesting things. So I think you should let yourself be hypnotized by the boobs. And then let this really, important information sink deeply into your brain.
Smart ladies.
Smart ladies.
Yeah.
That's us.
So we promised last week or last month. Oh my God, it's been way too long.
We're only doing one a month right now.
I got
It's
a
so
real
hard.
job, like a real
She's
or
like
fancy lady job.
She's like counseling people. She's at some fancy rehab center where she gets pudding every day. Whatever.
It's true. So yeah, we weren't here and we're sorry. So we're gonna make it
sorry.
up to you today though.
Yeah. So we are gonna do a fabulous episode on what are we talking about?
How to set boundaries in dating and relationships. Specifically, I think we want to focus on early dating.
Yeah.
Like how do you do that? That's a tough one.
It's scary. Guys, it's super scary. It's scary to set boundaries with the people that you love, let alone the people that you're just meeting.
Yeah.
Right?
It's true, and I almost think though, like it's easier to set boundaries with people you don't really know.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because when there's not as much to lose.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Although I find often the first couple, especially if you're dating and you're really into somebody, then it's kind of like you're testing the waters, right?
That's true.
You might be a little nervous, especially if it's an important boundary to set.
So I think one of the main reasons we don't set boundaries early on in dating is for this really annoying reason, is we want people to like us.
Oh, please like me.
Please, I'm desperate to be liked. That has gotten me in a lot of trouble, my friend.
Oh, tell me about it. Tell me about it. I've actually this week been replaying all the areas that I should have set boundaries and why I didn't. Just a little self-investigation.
I mean, one time I was doing some step work around this stuff, and my sponsor made me list out for all my relationships all the times I didn't set boundaries and I should have. That was a long list, I have to tell you.
I don't even know if I could do that list. That would be a year of writing.
It's true.
Yeah.
So yeah, not setting boundaries because you want someone to like you. Notice that. Notice that, right?
Totally. I have a rule now, within myself, which is called have the hard conversations.
I like that.
Yeah. So if it feels challenging, if it's a conversation I want to back away from, instead I'm going to lean into it. And usually it's a conversation around boundaries or needs, because boundaries and needs are so intricately tied, right?
I think that's what we were saying last time.
Yeah. And it's hard, right? It's hard to set a boundary and say, I need you to only go this far, or this is what feels appropriate for me. And it's also hard to say, and this is my need. This is actually what I need from you now.
That's right.
Those are scary places to go.
Right. So that reminds me of the way I teach people to set boundaries is that part, right? That third part is so important. So you have to get really clear on, before you say no to something, before you say,
Yeah.
it's really important to say well, what do you need now? If you're going to set a boundary and say, actually, that doesn't feel good, what I do need is this.
So what we do in early dating, what would be a normal little healthy boundary that might come up in early dating?
I can talk about a situation that recently happened to me.
Tell me. Oh, you get the goods.
Yeah, so I just set a boundary with this guy that I'd been, really getting to know over, slow dating. I've been really experimenting with that. Yeah. And a little red flag came up, right? And so I think that is a good time, a yellow flag, I guess.
So can you share what the yellow flag was?
Yeah, it was explaining to me something that I already knew, explaining to me what my gifts were, what my talents were, and saying you would be better suited to be doing this, or why are you doing that? You're better at this.
AKA mansplaining.
I didn't want to use that awful because I felt so uncomfortable with it because I really enjoyed his company up to that point.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what is happening? Why is this happening? And so I let it happen a couple of times, really.
Yeah.
I should have said it at the beginning, but I was a little bit confused by it. And remember I mentioned it to you and you were kind of like, I don't know.
Keep
Liz."
an eye. Let's keep an eye. This is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So by the third time, I think it was the third time.
Yeah.
This time I was like, okay, no, I need to set a boundary. And this is my process. And it is not the prettiest. I'm still learning boundary setting. But I need to take some space before I set a boundary. I actually might need like a day or two to process first. Like, what happened? Because I'll get a feeling first. And usually it's like resentment or anger or just like sheer anxiety.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
sometimes fear. So I'll be like, what's happening for me? So I took some space. I took a few days. I talked to my dating buddy. And then I realized I really need to say something.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets tricky. So I set a boundary and then it wasn't responded to in a way that I felt was helpful to the progression of the relationship.
Yeah.
Right? So then what? It's a next boundary after that, right? It's like first stage and second stage boundaries.
Totally. Right? So you set a boundary, you see what happens.
That's right.
What is the response? And then, so not just the response verbally, but then what is the action after the response?
Right.
And then maybe you guys can continue on and maybe it has shifted the dynamic, or maybe there's another boundary that needs to be set.
That's right. So I didn't get a response that I felt it was a big red flag. So I decided at that point that I was done. So I just didn't continue with that. And my big red flag after I set the boundary was this person not taking full ownership of them crossing my boundaries.
Yeah.
So they basically said, I'm sorry you're upset, or I'm sorry I upset you. And just FYI,
No.
if someone gives you an apology like that, that is not an apology. No, that's a non-apology.
Marissa's teaching me this. I show her all the apologies I get. Like, it's so many. Not like I get, it's not true, I don't get that many. But when I do, because I'm like, I don't even know. Or when I want to make an apology, I'm like, Marissa, because I'm shit at it. I'm the one who's over here being like, I'm sorry you feel hurt.
Oh no!
Which Marissa would put me
No.
over her knee and spank me in not a sexy way.
No, not sexy. So yeah, I just, that wasn't a good apology, so that was done. That was done for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe we should do another video on apologies one day.
I think we should absolutely, yeah. please.
So the 3-step boundary setting process. First, we have to tell people what they did.
Yep.
We have to say, here's what you did that I'm actually setting a boundary around, right? So make it clear.
Yeah.
You'd say, so when you did this, then you describe how you felt because of the action they did, right? So you'd say, when you did this, I felt anxious, I felt upset, I felt angry, I felt taken advantage of,
Yeah.
whatever the feeling is. And then the third part is making a request or expressing a need. So this part you have to be really clear in your communication. You don't say, so maybe next time can you... No, you say like, next time I need you to.
Yeah.
Next time my request is.
Could you please?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when you're done, you say all that. It probably would take you like 30 seconds to state that. Sometimes I have to write it down and read it. Well, over the phone. I don't want to be like, I need to set a boundary. I'm going to read this in front of me.
But I think it's important to say that sometimes, you know, if we're in the moment, sometimes we don't know what we need.
That's true.
We're in the feeling, maybe we're gotten a bit triggered.
That's a good point.
When we get triggered, often, like for me, my response is to be foggy. I'm foggy and confused when I'm
Me
triggered.
too.
So
That's
I'm
why
like,
I need to take a break.
exactly. So it's like, oh, something's going on. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And now noticing, because I don't want to be reactive, because in the past maybe I'd be reactive and there would be a big reaction that would come. Not me. Never. I would never be reactive. So maybe there would be a big reaction. Sometimes it would be maybe appropriate to something. Sometimes it would be completely inappropriate to what was going on. But now I want to take the time and be like, oh, I feel foggy, which for me means pause.
It does.
Take some space and then get clarity on what the need is. Because I find often in the moment, if I'm trying to figure out the need in the moment, I'm like, I don't know I just know I need you to stop that. I don't know what it is that I do need though.
That's right. I like that. I like that. Maybe you could like get back to them on the need later.
Yeah.
Right? But one thing that's really important is asking them for feedback. So you could say something like, can you tell me what you heard me say, or what did you understand from what I just said?
Yeah.
You know, because you need to know that they heard you. Sometimes it's hard to hear a boundary, so someone might misinterpret what you said. Like, so you could have a nice little conversation and say, no, actually, I didn't mean that. What I meant was this.
And it's so good, and so sorry, my doors are slamming in the background. So good to get this clarity because people don't see situations in the same way.
It's true.
There are different perspectives. I had a talk with one of my friends just a few days ago where I was like, I feel like this communication's ambiguous. And he was like, I feel like it's clear. We both explained our situation. And I was like, oh, I could see from your perspective how you would feel that it was clear. And he was like, I can see how you would feel that it's ambiguous.
Interesting.
So you don't know, just because you're experiencing something in a certain way, you don't know that that's clear to the other person. And I think getting that reflective communication back is so important.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to ask you, I think this is so important, what can we set boundaries about?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
That is.
Yeah. So I think we can set boundaries around conversation topics.
Yeah.
You know? So, for example, if I'm just getting to know somebody and they ask me a question related to maybe a past trauma that I don't feel comfortable talking about it with this person.
Yeah.
Or anything to do with the past relationships. I don't really want to get into the details.
Yeah.
Might be that you might need to set a boundary. Like you could say something, I'm not really feeling comfortable talking about that yet. Maybe later, at a later date when we know each other better.
Yeah.
What about you? What's a time to set boundaries?
I would say too, so there's a difference between, and I think this is where things also get a little muddy, between setting a boundary and being controlling. Right? So setting a boundary, you can set a boundary around the way something that's impacting you.
Yeah.
Not around somebody's behavior in general.
Oh, I love that distinction. That is very true. And so this is where I think people get confused when they think people setting boundaries are controlling.
Yeah.
I've heard that before. Like, I tried to set a boundary and he said I was controlling. It's like, well, okay, what was your boundary? Was it telling him to do something, right?
Or change who he is. So I was just having this discussion with my kids, and my son's super into the idea of boundaries, and he's been doing lots of work on himself and is like the boundary king right now.
Wow, boundary ninja.
He's a boundary ninja. He knows all about the boundaries. So he and his partner were having she's moved in with us. They were having a rough day of moving. They were bickering. It was the end of the day. I was cooking and I was like, guys, I really need you not to bicker. I'm setting a boundary about your bickering. And my son was all like, I'm sorry, you cannot set a boundary about our bickering. And I was like, well, but this is my space and I want it to be harmonious. So we sat down and we had a conversation. And
that's interesting.
Where the clarity came is I could set a boundary and say, guys, if you need to bicker, can you please go outside or go into your bedroom and do it there? No problem. Because we have an agreement to have a harmonious space. Me saying, I'm setting a boundary that you guys can't bicker, that's their stuff, right? I'm effectively being codependent by getting into their behavior as opposed to setting a boundary about what actually directly impacts me, which is I don't want you bickering in the kitchen while I'm cooking.
Or like setting a boundary that you need someone to go to therapy, you know? And it's like, that's not really a boundary, that's more of a request. That's kind of like, this is important to me, but I don't think that's a boundary, right?
No, but you could set a boundary saying, you know, I need you to treat me in a different way.
Yes, exactly.
I need you to treat me with respect. I need you to be calm. And there's a good chance that in order for you to do those things, you might need to go to therapy.
Exactly. Or if they ask you, I don't know how to do that, you can say, well, therapy might help you.
Exactly. And so those are the subtle differences, right? So say, for instance, you know, with a new person that you're dating, you could set a boundary around, you know, say time is really important to me, and it's really important to me that unless you have a very good reason that you show up on time.
Yeah, that's important because that affects you, right?
Totally.
Anything that affects you.
Totally.
Rosie and I were talking in another video about setting an early no and seeing what happens.
I love this.
So this is not game playing. This is not manipulation. When we're talking about getting to know somebody, we need to know them.
Yeah.
So that includes, what are they going to do when we set a boundary? Will they respect the boundary, right? Will they, you know?
And, oh my God. Yes, in investigating some of my past relationships this week, I've been doing some deep investigation around like my core wounding and how that has transferred into the types of relationships I've created.
That sounds fun.
It's been so fun, guys. So fun. And you'll be able to read about it soon in my book that will be coming out. Actually, for real. But yeah, it's not been fucking fun at all. It's been super
like tough work.
shitty. But what I have noticed is like, oh my goodness, like why did I expect there to be any difference in the behavior from the person when they were not listening to my boundaries early on, especially really important ones. When the people that I was, involved with were in a place of disrespecting very important boundaries from the get-go, what in my brain made me expect that would somehow translate into them then moving into being respectful around boundaries?
Yeah. So what do you think was going on there that you...
I think that I was replaying some old trauma, as we do. We replay it and we try to find closure by continuing the cycle again and again, and until we've had some healing. And usually we're not...
Repetition compulsion.
Exactly.
I also call that pathological optimism.
Doesn't work. I can tell you right now, it doesn't work.
No.
Not to say that those...
I'm so hopeful they'll change. That's not good.
No. And not to say there wasn't lots of other beautiful things in those relationships, but looking at that, I'm like, oh, I can see now. Like, I was banging my head against the wall, but I had those signs from the get-go.
You sure did, right?
Those boundaries weren't going to be respected.
So, yeah. So, a good way to do this is even just this example Rosie gave around time. Like, if somebody's, a little bit late and you are like, that's not cool. Mm-hmm. You might want to say something, hey, when you're late, I feel like you don't value my time. In the future, it's really important to me. Could you arrive on time?
Yep. And
see what they do. If they're like, well, I'm trying my best. I try to get here on time. Why is your time so important? My time's important too. Right? I've had people talk to me like that.
Yeah. And then you're like, bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Then because how it's going to go. I would say the other thing too is to, even make a little slight change. Like, I prefer to talk on the phone as opposed to text, or vice versa.
I did that just last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome. This guy was like, I'm noticing you're not really responding much to my texts. He was writing me these really nice long texts, and I'm really not good at texting. I can't be bothered. So he was like, I'm noticing you're not really responding much. Like, are you just not really into chatting with me? I just wanted to check. And I was like, actually, I'm just really not into texting. Can we have a phone call instead? He's like, great. So he's been calling me, a couple of times now. And that's awesome.
And that's beautiful. So Marissa, set her boundary.
Yeah.
And then said what her need was.
That's true.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And this guy has shown up and showing that he's also going to do that.
Yeah.
If he was like, hey, no, I need to text more, or you need to respond to my texts quicker, or she would know that's a no. That's a no for her, right? Like, all of this is giving us clarity from the get-go.
So, and what some people do is they like to push your boundaries to see how far they can go.
And that is a huge red flag, guys, because if they're pushing your boundaries from the get-go, as I was reinvestigating, I was like, wow, my boundaries not only didn't get listened to, they got pushed, there was coercion.
Yeah.
That's going to continue on in your relationship, and probably in bigger ways.
You've come a long way.
I've come a long way, guys.
Yeah. Well, that was a really great video about boundaries. Anything else you want to talk about?
We could talk for hours. Between the two of us, we could talk for hours. But I think that's lots.
Yeah, and next week we're going to talk about
boundaries in the bedroom. Woo! Which I think is so important. We're going to get into some deep and hot topics, because this is actually leads into, I think, really defining what rape culture is. Consent, coercion. What's the difference between a sexual situation that you've consented to and something that becomes coercive and assaultive.
Oh, I'm really excited for this conversation.
Yeah, it's really important. It's a deeply important conversation, and it's ever evolving right now.
It is, that's for sure.
So that's it. That's it for us.
Yeah, join us next time.
Okay, and at the end of today's video, you can stay on and you're going to see the first video from this series that we did. So in case you missed it, we'll just go on back. Like, subscribe.
Can't wait to see you next time.
Love you. Love you.